Mualani is a very good taxi. I do recommend Mualani as a taxi until Shonen releases. Okay, you know what? Maybe I have to take that back.
Showtime!
Okay, Mualani. Natlin's #1 taxi. Let's talk about Mualani. So, I have been playing Mualani for 1 day. Technically, 5 hours. So, we're gonna base my impressions off my day 3 gameplay. If you're wondering why, put it simply, I did not sleep during 5.0's release. I stayed up all night, and then after that, I was busy doing Shonen stuff, still without sleeping, and then I took a nap, and then I streamed later that same day. My mental has not been the best. Yeah, you get the idea. My mental has not been in the right place to accurately play this character and give her the fairest treatment. That being said, I'm gonna just start this with a disclaimer. Mualani is the most frustrating character that's ever released in Genshin Impact since 1.5. Yeah, most frustrating character since Eula or ever. Being frustrating does not mean that she doesn't do damage, because the damage is pretty good. Do I think Mualani is great? Maybe? Pretty similarly to some Emily coverage, my Farina has constellations. This does impact my opinion of Mualani and the teams that I played with Mualani. Could I have borrowed an account? Technically, no. Today is the first day Mualani's mats were available. Not everyone paid money to do things early. I tried to get an Obsidian Codex set. I spent 30 fragiles on the domain. It did not work. The set that I've been using on Mualani is Shimenawa's. This is with Surf's Up, the 5-star weapon. This is my Mualani. My talent levels are currently 10-5. Ayo, you should subscribe. We're gonna keep doing pre-release content. We're gonna keep doing Genshin. We're gonna keep doing Zenless. You should subscribe. Did you know 80% of you aren't subscribed? Yeah, 80%. Oh yeah, also, if you subscribe and hit the bell, you can actually know whenever I stream on YouTube.
Amazing!
I guess let's start by talking about teams that I've played. Let's talk about Dendro. I found Emily nice because of the Abyss modifier right now. Honestly, I'm not sure how much I'd actually like Emily. I'm not sure how much I liked Emily. The problem with Emily is really simple. Emily doesn't buff Mualani, and Mualani needs to do a lot of damage to feel good. So I'm gonna use Zhongli, Emily, Xiangling as an excuse to talk about value of burning. Burning does not actually apply pyro for Hydro characters. It barely applies it for Cryo characters. What burning actually does is it creates aura consistency. It means when if you were to apply Hydro twice in a row, you won't apply a Hydro aura easily. And when you do, the Dendro immediately wipes it, so the Pyro can apply next and replace the aura. So what Dendro does is it smooths out aura transitions and prevents you from maintaining Hydro, but it does not inherently apply Pyro. Because of that, a lot of what people have been recommending, like Nahida, Xiaoling, Farina, while technically good and consistent, you could also easily argue that it doesn't do anything. Same thing with Baiju. The thing that Baiju really does is not get in the way. You wouldn't want a healer who is intrusive. You wouldn't use Prototype Amber Lisa in a Mualani team, for example. Or you wouldn't use a Hydro healer. But at the same time, while Dendro is useful, I don't think it's necessary, and I struggle to find how useful it actually is. I feel like a bit of it is placebo effect, or just that it's easy to play, and Nahida buffs EM, Emily does damage. Buffing EM is great for Mualani. Doing damage from Emily can be great for Mualani. Now, the reason I say it can be great for Mualani is because if an enemy dies while Mualani is in her bite animation, she will not drop the floater. I'm sorry, the puffer. But yeah, I think it's nice to not have all of your damage dependent on Mualani. It can be a positive, it can be a negative. I generally liked it because my Mualani was not doing perfect damage to one-shot enemy waves. Mualani is one of those characters who benefits a lot from doing more damage. The best way to deal with jank is to deal with it less. And how do you deal with it less? You deal with it less times, meaning you only do 1 bite per wave of enemies. When you need to do 2, 3, 4 bites per wave, things become very frustrating very quickly. I'm not gonna say it's impossible for Mualani to hit those thresholds. I am gonna say it's difficult.
Splendid!
Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is Yelan. I don't know how they set up Mualani's hit to work with Toma and not work with Yelan. If you don't know, Toma and Yelan's C2 hit 1 frame apart. Did they intentionally perfectly tune Mualani to work with this? Did they intentionally do that? Bravo for the foresight. I expected Yelan to not work at all. I am shocked that it worked. It was a pleasant surprise for me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's intentional. I am shocked that they thought about it. Hoyo playing a 4D chess. But anyway, Yelan was really good. Yelan's really nice in a similar way to Farina for energy. What Yelan, I guess, loses in buffing capacity, unless you were to play a healerless Farina team. If you're gonna play a healerless Farina team without Farina constellations, Yelan should just be better for Mualani. Yelan is also more consistent, and I believe Yelan generates more energy as well. So that's all good things. I think Yelan with Mualani is surprisingly solid. By far, dark horse of this release. I did not expect it to like this team. But you know what? I like this team. It is still a healerless team. It won't be forever. And it doesn't have the inconsistency problems that Farina teams can have. So the biggest thing about Farina is that Farina applies non-user dictated hydro. Her Saloon Solitaire, they all apply hydro at essentially random intervals. This can be inconvenient. It can also be whatever, because this makes Farina do a lot of damage. That is notable for a couple reasons. Apparently 55% of Farinas aren't C0. Usage metrics are very biased, but you can somewhat assume Farina's constellations by these estimates, which isn't exactly something I'm a fan of, but it means that a lot of people watching may be likely to have Farina's constellations, which makes Farina incredibly good with Mualani. As long as you have at least C1 on Farina. Something you can do to help with consistency is switch Farina into healer mode. I did not like doing this because of the energy problem. Yeah, the energy situation. And also, I like that Farina does damage from off field. It can get in the way, it can be inconsistent. I really like it. I don't know how else to put it. It makes things less dependent on Mualani's mechanics, which we'll talk about after teams. If you do want a healer for the teams, you will want to use Baiju, Jean, or Xianyan, or Shilin.
Are your nerves getting to you?
What else did we play? We played Kazuha Zhongli. It's surprisingly easy to throw Mualani's N1 at the start of a chamber. Yeah, I liked that. You can also do a similar technique with Katsina, where you put down Katsina's drill, then do Mualani's N1, and Katsina will crystallize because it takes so long for her to hit for the first time. So that's really cool. Katsina can use Scroll. That's all Katsina does. She's all right. Scroll's a good set. The problem is you have to get a Hydro Crystal consistently, which, in my opinion, isn't really a problem. That's teams. That's a good overview. These are the Mualani teams that I played. Now, you may see this lineup and question, hey, why are you only using Xiangling? There are some really good reasons. Any other Pyro character is really not good enough. So Toma, Deha, Xinyan, these are not good enough. They do not apply Pyro and AoE sufficiently when Mualani is biting as quick as she possibly can when there are multiple enemies involved. AoE is the major failing for Deha and Toma. While they work in single target, they do not work outside of it, and they're simply just not worth using. Sorry, I don't know what else to say. You have to use Xiangling. There's no alternative. You have to use Xiangling.
Not too shabby, am I right?
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about mechanics. Let's talk about expectations and reality. Expectations and reality. Despite all of the nerfs, I still had very high expectations for Mualani. I feel like I still should have very high expectations for Mualani. My expectations for Mualani were too high. When I was initially comparing her to places that I probably shouldn't have been, when I took a step back and looked at her performance compared to some teams that I don't play as much or characters that I didn't have as high of an opinion of, she looked solid. I would comfortably say Mualani is as good or better than Xiao. Gold star. Cleared the Xiao threshold. Yeah, Mualani does a lot of damage. She's very frustrating to play. One of the reasons she is frustrating to play is because of the puffer. If you don't know, when Mualani's Sharky Surging Bite hits an opponent, a puffer will be generated nearby. Mualani restores 20 Night Soul points when she picks up a puffer. Only 2 puffers can be created in this way during a single instance of Night Soul's Blessing. Yes, this is as much of a problem as I think it is. or as I feared. It's arguably worse. It's Gaming's Manchai, but if you don't pick up Manchai in perfect or at the right time, your burst ends. I am baffled by their decision to add 2 or to make her pick up 2 puffers instead of 1. But that's how Mualani works now. So we're not gonna worry about what could have been, we're worrying about what's here. Yeah, it feels really bad when you just miss the puffer. The puffer primarily is a problem when you look at enemies like PMA or when you're in multi-wave when enemies move. So you clear a wave of enemies and you need to move to the next wave. The puffer won't actually come to you unless you wait for it. Or the puffer can get to you, or it can arrive too late. It's very frustrating on Chamber 2. Chamber 2 specifically makes it very frustrating. Or even sometimes on Chamber 3 when the enemies move. Yeah, the puffer is by far the most frustrating thing about Mualani to me. Yeah, that's my opinion about the puffer. Horrible mechanic, never do this again. Okay, we also need to talk about Mualani's Elemental Burst. Her Elemental Burst is kind of weird. It takes a long time to hit. It can either hit immediately or it can take 2 seconds to hit. It's odd that it's a projectile that has to be fired out by the animation. Also, it can hit the wall instead of hitting enemies and not do damage. This can also occur with her Sharky missiles, FYI. I found this out the hard way. Zhongli's pillar can block the Sharky missile. Her Sharky bite can also miss enemies if they move. You can just reset and not have to deal with, and you can just reset. And these things cease to be problems if you're patient enough. If you're patient enough, these things aren't actually problems, they're just minor inconveniences. You could even say they're just minor inconveniences and annoyances. I found them frustrating. Oh yeah, the other thing is, I think it's a ping delay on her charge. You can hit 3 charges and it will still do the level 2 bite, and that won't drop the puffer. Yeah, that's frustrating too. Or sometimes it drops the puffer anyway. That's also a minor annoyance that can end up stacking up and being really frustrating. Let's talk about a positive though. Mualani does big screenshots. This isn't something that appeals to me anymore, but I definitely had a phase a couple years ago where it did. Some YouTubers never grow out of it. Yeah, she does big damage. It's cool. It doesn't appeal to me as much anymore, but I appreciate it, and I understand there are people who do want to see her hit 1,000,000 damage. Straight up, it's awesome. If you just want to see big numbers on your screen, go for it.
All right, let's do it.
Mualani is also an overworld god. She is the Natlan's #1 taxi. There is no one else like her yet until Shonen releases. You can surf around and use Fossiligen for extra surfing duration and just pick up stuff. Mualani actually recovers Fossiligen by picking up items or just picking up resources in Natlan. She is so good for Overworld. The only downside is she consumes more Night Soul off of the water. If only Mualani consumed that little Fossiligen everywhere. She also has the resource gathering passive, which, while it's not as good as it used to be, it's also arguably better than it used to be, because you can mark spots on your map and it will tell you exactly where they are within that area. So you just know exactly where everything is. It's like, blah, 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 blah. It is fantastic. It's a fantastic experience. Gathering Mualani's resources with Mualani, it changed my world. It absolutely changed my world. The other thing I want to mention is Mualani's mechanics are also a lot more forgiving in Overworld because of Fossiligen applying to her elemental skill. It's not a big deal if you miss the puffer because you can just pick up the puffer late. I kind of wish your 5-star weapon didn't have a vape restriction because of Overworld. Because it's right now it's a bit hard to set up for vape in Overworld if you need the damage. Kind of weird. I wonder if there's a reason that's a problem. Anyway, that is Mualani. The positives are she can also just do a lot of DPS. Mualani's DPS is still high. It is not as high as it maybe could have been, but it is still high. It's still great. It's going to get better. If you have the patience and you have the drive, you have the passion, you play the maracas, Mualani's great. Pulfer, you will be happy if you want to dedicate yourself to a character. If you aren't a hardcore player or you don't just care about Overworld, I think Mualani is frustrating and maybe questionable. But that doesn't mean that she can't be performative. It just means that I find her unpleasant, and you may feel the same.